stopped it because my mic wasn't on because I forgot to put my mic on it because I'm an idiot. But now we're live, so now Gray can do his
Okay.
thing.
All right.
Or maybe
Yeah.
Gray's still eating. So, hello
Oh no no
everybody,
oh
welcome
no
to.
no sorry I am here right hi internet. We're super professional here. That's
50
how that works.
Shades of it.
The
Yep.
shades of it. I am Lost Wolf and the Old Grey Wolf. I have a bunch of people with me. I have Schoolers. Say hello, Schoolers.
Hey guys.
And I have Yoda. Say hello, Yoda.
Hello, people who watch the show.
So about a week and well, 2 weeks ago now, we set up after a super long hiatus. We went from one of my games to another one of my games where we had a slightly shorter hiatus, but we still had a hiatus because that's how it works with my game clubs, which is which is fine, and I don't mind. It's not a problem. Everyone did get to play this one, which is good. So the game that we were playing was a thing called Reigns. Reigns is a kingdom simulator in which you choose binary options. And the way it presents these binary options is with cards, and you do a Tinder thing where you flick yes or you flick no, and that has an effect on your kingdom. And at first, you can't see what the direct effects are. You just see a bunch of bars, and the bars go up or down, but you don't know how many uh, numbers you are losing or gaining from your choices. And then as your choices, carry forth, they will end up having implications. Like there's four sections of society. So there's the economy on the one hand, and the church on the other hand, and then the army and the people. And if, for example, you please the people enough, then you have a meter, and the people are so pleased that they come and kill you. And
Yeah.
that's basically Reigns. Reigns is very brutal. And I mean, there's no way to have a monarch in power for too long because he'll keep dying. But the idea is basically to see this giant deck of cards and see kind of the silly, funny things that the game will throw you. Now, the reason we're playing Reigns specifically is because Reigns is a cool idea, but the way it does this cool idea is by throwing away a lot of nuance. Like just tons and tons of nuance. You will be confronted with uh, things like, oh, there's a plague, right? So who do we save? And there's no middle ground. Like either you will save the people in the castle, or you will save the people um, who are out in the fields and doing all the work. But there's no middle ground. There's no like, let's save all the doctors, or let's save all the scientists, or even more varied than that. Let's save maybe all the rich people, and then the doctors along with them, and so there's no nuance. It's just either you are saving the people in the castle or the people in the surrounding areas, and that's it.
Yeah.
And that's Reigns in a nutshell. It's a very cool idea, and that's why we're talking about it. So let's start talking about the art style because that's very distinct for Reigns. Um, it's sort of cartoony, which is good for this game because it the idea behind Reigns is that it divorces you from reality, and one of the ways it does this is through its graphic style. The graphic style is super cartoony. Everyone has
Geometric
super
faces and stuff.
geometric faces, and they're all monotone colors. So if you're seeing someone and, like, say they're a person from abroad, the game will make it abundantly clear because they will have a different skin tone from everyone else.
Right.
And this is great because one of the things it also does is, in a warped way, this skews your perception against people, you know. And that's what Reigns is. Reigns is trying to abstract all these nuances so it gets very visceral reactions out of you. So, what do we think of uh, the graphic style? Is there anyone who didn't like this actually? Let's talk about that first. Is there anyone who didn't like the art style?
Oh, I like the art style. The color palette reminds me a lot of This Is the Police, which I'll probably have you guys play on this one of these days. but I really like the facial shapes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
They're like they're like an even more simplified version of like a Brad Bird film where everyone's very stylized, but this takes it to a very much
like
further
very
extreme.
extreme level.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, much further extreme. Because when you look at the people, like literally, the mouth is a slit and the eyes are two little dots, and um, you can tell that a person is a thing by looking at their dress code more than anything else.
Yeah.
So, like, the nun will have a habit, or the economic guy will be dressed very smartly, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
I was actually just going to mention that I like the art style in this for a couple of reasons. First off, it's very simple.
Yeah.
So your focus is still on the questions, not the art style, so
Right.
much. Also, the people I was just going to mention are very recognizable. Once you play for a while, you begin to see from the army, and
Right.
this guy's from the church. So you can choose based on their options, or based on
Yes.
their visible presentation.
Right.
Basically, and see what your bars are at the top, and kind of make a prediction of what's going to happen to your yes or no question.
Yep.
Yeah.
And also, again, it throws away a lot of nuance. When you see these people, they don't actually present too much by way of emotion. So when you're dealing with them, it's again, Reigns forces you to be very cold and somewhat calculating. When you look at these people, they're telling you these super dire things, but they don't look worried. They just, for the most part, they look very placid. There are occasions where they will look a little bit more odd than they would otherwise. Like one of the cards I eventually got was a thing that turned everyone into rabbits, and then they look different. But for the most part, when you're dealing with these people, the only sign, and I did some reading about this game while I was playing it, the only sign that something weird is happening a lot of the time is how often they blink. And if you accede to their wishes, if you say yes a lot, then they blink very slowly. But as they worry about your trust with them, they start blinking faster. And this is almost the only tell that you have that someone is worried that you're not listening to them.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I never paid attention to it, I guess.
Yeah, there's a lot
It's
of
hard to
notice.
notice. It's not
It is
immediately
hard to
obvious.
notice. It isn't, because you have to say no to them a lot in order to notice the blinking, because then it speeds up. But it's again, it's like if you're not looking for it, you'd never see it. And that's the kind of great thing about Range, is that there's like a lot of little things happening under the hood that you're not totally aware of. Because I mean, when you start playing, you're like, oh well, okay, I'm just going to say yes or no to these cards. But it turns out that the more you play, the more everything has bearing on what you're choosing.
Yeah.
So you can you can screw your next life, because this is the way it works. Your monarch dies, and then your son continues, or your daughter continues. And when your son or your daughter continues, they inherit the kingdom from you. And so what you can do, like one of the things that I did was, in one of my first games I ever played, they gave me this option. We had a surplus of food, and they were saying, oh, we can build a granary. I was like, we're fine. Everything's okay. And then a little while later down the line, was 2 or 3 monarchs away, but we ran out of food and we all died. But in the next game, just to see what would happen and why it was different, it turned out that the granary gave you a buffer of food, so that when you made food choices, they wouldn't weigh quite so heavily.
Right, you'd fall on hard times, then maybe you got a backup.
Then it was all right, because there was a buffer. But that's the thing. Reigns doesn't immediately strike you as being too complicated, but then the more you play, the more you start seeing that there's a lot happening under the hood. Did anyone
there are also some I don't want to say less ambiguous questions, I guess. Some of them are more like statements and not questions, and then you're just given options.
Yeah,
like,
and you say, "Oh, okay," or "I don't know."
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, I had one I remember very clearly was the townspeople are building a statue of you.
Yes, and then there's no good way
that was
to
the
say
statement.
yes or
Yeah,
no.
there's no.
Like,
You can't because
what do you think about that?
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful was an answer, and why would they do that is the other.
And
it's like you're appreciative or not appreciative, and either way it hurts you. It was not an okay.
Yeah,
it hurts you in some way, and that's the kind of roguelike-ish nature, I guess, behind this. Is I always wanted to try to keep my kinks just alive as long as possible, and you can't let one option become too high or too low. Like, so I kept thinking, I'll just try to max out everything, but as soon as you max something out, like the first time I ended up maxing the church out, and they're like,
cheers, have a nice life. Goodbye.
And then the church overthrows you because they're more powerful.
Yeah. One of the things that makes no sense to me about Reigns, and this is an unfortunate design consequence of the way they've chosen to represent everything, is, you know, one of the very, very few cases where you're thinking, max everything is economy.
Yes.
But then you do, and the economy screws you.
Yeah. And it's like, you've created a monopoly. What?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the corporations all own you now. And I'm like, what do you mean corporations? I'm the fucking king.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a little silly, but as a gameplay mechanic, it makes it interesting because you always have to try to keep in balance, because you basically have a death bar at the top and bottom of all your life bars, which is interesting to say the least.
Yep. Right. And the other thing is that, like I was talking about at the beginning, Reigns does a lot to obfuscate what's going on. So the first time you boot into the game, you don't even have numbers for how this is affecting you. You have circles, and the thing is that when you're looking at the circles, you only see big or small. You don't see is this plus, is it minus, what's going on, and
you just have to kind of assume based on what they're telling you. Like if the general comes up to you and goes, "Hey, the army's bored. Can we do something?"
Yes, right.
Then you kind of have to assume the circle over the army. If you tell them, "Yeah, go practice," it'll probably make them a bit better.
Yeah, right. And it isn't until you do a couple of runs that you start being able to see the numbers. And also, the other thing about that is, and again, this is just a design choice that I felt was a little bit awkward, is that once you unlock the ability to see the numbers, the game can take it away. You know?
Oh.
You're seeing the numbers, and then suddenly, woof, you're not, because one of your monarchs isn't smart enough. Or one of my guys lived very long, and he eventually ended up going deaf and blind. And so, when he went deaf and blind, people were telling him things, but you can't make sense of the cards that you're seeing.
Yeah, because you can't see.
Right, and then you also can't make sense of the results that you're seeing, because the game doesn't outright lie to you, but because you're deaf and blind, it represents this as the king not having full control of all of his faculties, and so when he makes decisions, sometimes they're awful decisions.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So I like the way that it presents choices as ridiculously binary, because one of the reasons, again, that we're playing Range is because it has so much bearing on the real world. Like, if we look at things today, a lot of the time we're looking at them and we're thinking, oh, that's good or that's bad. I don't want to bring politics too much into this, but you know, this is really what Reigns is about. You know, you can look at a situation and then say, oh, based on my political affiliation, that is a good thing or that is a terrible thing. And Reigns is all about that. It's all about, oh, everything is binary now. There's no nuance.
Yeah.
Speaking of those choices, were there any particular choices that you had that maybe made me
a little terrified later on? When I got to year 666, I felt a little fucking terrified. Put it that way. Did you guys get there?
No, I don't think so. I only played about 3 or 4 rounds. I think the longest guy I had lived was like 8 years.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Then you didn't like it. Okay, so this is GameClub. We're going to spoiler some stuff.
Yes.
But in a game like Reigns, it's very difficult to spoiler unless you sit and play and play and play.
Yeah.
And I don't think anyone seriously did that. So one of the guys that keeps on coming up to you is your dog, and he keeps on making nonsensical statements like woof and bark. And
yeah, and you're just like, all right, cool, good dog.
That's my dog, and he's awesome.
I don't know how you've been around for hundreds of years, but I'll just chalk it up to we just keep getting a new dog. But nope, that's totally not the case.
Well, no, okay, let's do that a little differently, because every advisor stays with you forever, and they all have the same name. So it's not, weird or out of place when a dog's named Rex and it's 666 years later. It's not at all out of place, in fact. And suddenly the dog is like, oh, we're going to go into the forest, and it leads you along. And then, out of nowhere, like Rex, his card is a sweet-looking doggy, and he's fun to be around. And then you do one specific choice at 666, and suddenly he's like bathed in flames, and his eyes
his car
red.
turns into flames. The background becomes basically hell itself. I took a screenshot of it. I'll have to try to find it and post it up here while we're doing this, because it was it's very different from the calm, cool little aesthetic,
like the
moonlit background that you have the whole time, and then it's just like it's like Jesus.
And suddenly it turns out that Rex is actually the devil.
Yes.
And what the devil is doing, there is long-term narrative in Reigns, but it's very under the hood. Okay, so the devil shows up, and one of the lingering things that starts you off is every time you die, or if you pass your kingdom on, whenever you pass your kingdom on, one of the things that you have to almost inevitably do, because your previous monarch screwed up so badly, is, assuming your king lives and he's around, you have to banish him kind of to a dungeon, and the next king will come along, and there'll be like a spirit thing saying, hey, do you understand that you're basically living the same life over and over again? And when Rex shows up, he ties into this narrative. He's like, well, do you understand that you are a forever being, and that all that's happening around you is that the scenery is essentially changing? So there is kind of a meta narrative with Reigns, but again, it's going to take you a while to see the whole meta narrative, because there's depending on which version of the game you have, there's 750 cards, so it'll take you a bit to see the whole thing.
Yeah.
And Rex will show up every clockwork 666 years, and that will build the meta narrative a little bit more until you understand the whole thing. So there is a thread of story in today, but it's very thin. But it's great because it's surprising. If you're not expecting Rex, then Rex is out of nowhere and a bit weird.
Yeah, I wasn't really expecting that to go down like that, but I'm getting the image up for it soon. I can throw it in there so Jason can see it. I'll get it on the stream in just a second here, but yeah. No, it's cool. There were a few things like that. I thought for sure, because that happened to me after I met the two birds, and I thought for sure one of them was an angel and one of them was a demon. I don't know if that's the case.
No.
What happens with those? I want to know.
Okay. so with the birds have a little bit of a meta story as well, but it's not as long or as drawn out as the one with Rex. What happens with the birds is one of them turns out to be like a little homunculus, and he can give you science stuff, but you need to do it the right way, otherwise he just goes, oh well, I'm never talking to you again. And the other one is a sort of good being. The dove is the sort of good being.
Yeah, I picked the dove. I mean, I thought it was gonna pull a switcheroo on me and be like, oh yeah, the nice dove is actually the demon from hell, but no,
they've already got one of those, so they wouldn't do that again.
Well, I didn't meet the demon from hell before the dove stuff happened.
Okay.
I met the dove, and then I pet my dog, and then he turned into the fucking devil. But yeah, on the stream there, you can see the image of what happens, and I threw it in Skype for you there, Jason, if you want to take a look at it.
Yeah, I saw it.
Right.
But yeah.
Oh yeah, there we go. That is the one.
changes the game a little bit.
It does, because now you know that you're sort of on a little bit. It's not a clock. It's just you're on a timer where you know that every 666 years Rex is going to visit you, and he's going to do something even more awkward. Like the first time he does anything to you, one of the things he does is and the implication for this is so dire, right? Mm-hmm. The first thing he does, if you pick correctly with Rex, is he lets your deaths be enjoyable. So the implication is that every death before this was terrifying, you know.
Yeah, they don't look too fun when you die. So
no, the game presents them as sort of silly and funny, but every death is sort of incredibly dire, you know. Mm-hmm. The population swells too much and overthrows you, or like you said, you end up with a monopoly, and that's bad for everyone. And that kind of thing. So the deaths are pretty dire. So the implication here is that Rex is saying, all right, well, you know, I know that you're going to fail, but I can make your failures at least palatable to you. And it's under the hood, and you're not really thinking about, because it's cartoon violence, you know. You're not really thinking about how terrifying what you're seeing actually is.
What it would be if they presented everything as a bit more realistic. Yeah, that would be
right. And then Rex
suddenly
jaws you and says, "Oh, by the way, I'm going to make your deaths more fun, or not fun, but more palatable to you. You know, the people are overthrowing you and whatnot, and they're seeing the violence and whatnot, and maybe you're just having a little tickle and then you die. You know."
Just a wee little tickle.
Yeah, that's a bit of a scary tickle. But the thing is that, again, Reigns is hiding so much from you, and it's great for that, because I was going to say the thing that tripped me up the most, that made me pause and actually not be sure of what to say, is that somewhere at about 1,000 years in, which is about 400 years from when you start playing, one of the edicts that I got was, do you want to allow polygamy? And I'm like, sure, I don't care.
Yeah, let them do what they want.
Why not?
Let the people do what they want to do. But I had to pause there and then say, actually, for the sake of this conversation, this is the Middle Ages, and these people didn't necessarily feel that way, Yeah. And I had to think about it for a little while about whether or not, because what would happen in that case is it's either the church wins because you get monogamy, or the people win because you get polygamy. And my take on it had been, for the longest time while I was playing that game, the church is okay, but I, as a person, as a human being, I'm not too stressed about what the church does. So whenever there was church choice, I'd be like, nah. And the thing about this particular card was that when it was going to swing either way, it was a giant swing,
Yeah.
And
I never really had anything subtle happen. Most of it was like, the army guy would come up and be like, "Hey, your people are creating too much livestock.
Yeah.
Let us take care of that."
Yes.
Yeah.
and you're like, well, no, that's good. Livestock is good. It means we have more food. So I told him no, and then the army is like, "No, fuck you. You're dead. We're killing you now."
That's right.
And that was it. It didn't matter what the bars were like. It was snap over, because you chose not to kill the livestock, and I kind of had an issue with that, because I just didn't know. I understand that the little circles, and the bigger the circle, the bigger the swing was. But
like I said, that eventually does go away to some degree. You do see the numbers, but it takes a while to get there.
Yeah, my first many kings had very short-lived lives, and then I had a very long one who was the one that met Jake the Devil. and he was 49 years, which was a little frustrating to say the least. I really wanted to reach 50.
Yeah, I managed to get a guy to 60, but it was tricky. That was the guy who went blind and deaf.
Yeah.
One day he woke up and he had a sharp pain, and he was like, "Oh, I can't say anything," and that was that.
Yeah. But see, it's interesting after you meet the devil too, because he goes, all right, well, so now the next time you say yes to anybody, I'm gonna kill them.
Yes.
And I go, oh, right. Okay. And what I had done earlier was there was this this kid whose mother kept claiming that I was his true father, and I was like, I know I did not make any choices to be with, because I didn't. I wasn't like, I didn't choose to be with anyone. I had chose deliberately not to make contact with a lot of people before, so I was like, I don't know about that, but I'll keep this guy around anyway. And so I said, sure, he's my kid, and he'd hang out around the castle, and he was such a little piece of shit. He was always like, I want more money, and I'm gonna go do this, and I want to go kill civilians because it'll be fun. And I was like, okay, whatever. And so when the pitchfork thing came around, I was like, I'm not going to feel bad about this at all. And sure enough, he came up and he was like, I need money. I was like, sure, here you go.
I have some money.
And then my pitchfork thing went away, and then they were like, a body was found in the river.
Yes,
it is so mangled they can't tell who it is, and your son is missing. I was like, oh my god.
How did that happen? I have no idea.
Christ.
I certainly didn't make a deal with the devil or anything. I don't know what you guys
know.
I didn't try to make a deal with the devil. The devil is just like, you pet me. And so now you have this happen. And I was like, well, great.
Yeah.
The witch is interesting too.
She is. That is like almost certainly what Rex would do the first time around. He would come up to you, and then like he gives you this ability to not worry about your death so much, but then again, it takes a very... Rex has a price, and the price here is that someone will die, and you were in a fortunate position to decide something that you knew that you weren't into.
I could see how that could screw someone over. Like maybe if you were, like really, really low on military, and you had to tell the military guy yes, just to keep them alive, but you don't actually want to kill him.
Right. I got sort of lucky. In that. So one of the other characters that you can meet is a guy who is basically just he kills people. He's the beheading guy. So they decide that there's a crime. They lock the guy up, and then in the morning, they behead him. So I had that guy come up to me a couple of times, and he was acting super weird. I was like, I'm not going to feel bad when I kill you because you're killing my people. Bye.
I had a couple that were, like, not in terms of the Rex thing, but there was, I'm going back a little bit because I didn't get as far as you guys did.
Yeah.
But like the general would come up, and there's too many people here. We need to expand the kingdom, or we can just kill all the extra civilians. Yeah. And I'm like, well, we can't just kill the extra civilians. Let's expand the kingdom. But but lo and behold, expanding the kingdom starts a war with the neighboring kingdom, and you die anyway.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That is one thing that I'm not altogether crazy about with Reigns. I love Reigns. Reigns is a great game for what it does and how it presents itself and all the things going on in the hood. But it obfuscates a little too much. There's information.
It leaves a lot up to just trial and error, which is not the best way to go about things. I never really feel like you're learning how things work. You just learn, so don't do that with this guy next time with the next game.
Yeah. Because one of my central problems with Reigns, and it's one of the very few complaints I have about that game, is that if you are a monarch like that and you do want to be benevolent, you would make sure that you knew what was going on, and you'd make sure of numbers, and you'd make sure of, talking to people all the time to ascertain where they are and what they're doing and all that kind of thing. So you would have information, but the game doesn't ever dole out any of that. There's no census, there's no...
It's always a do this by any means necessary decision.
Yes.
Which it sort of bothers me, but I like it. I have fun with playing. But I don't know. I never make it very far in these kinds of things though, because
in Reigns it's okay, because the thing is that Reigns is super forgiving. You'll die and you'll die and you'll die, but as you die, you unlock things, and that's the whole
it never
thing.
really feels like you lose a whole lot when you die,
No.
unless and even when you lose like someone who's gone for almost 50 years, when you start over, it feels kind of refreshing because then your health bars aren't all fucked up, because that's what they are. Let's just call them what they are. They're all health bars.
Yeah, they're all health bars, right? And so, like, I love the idea of Reigns, but like I said, I feel like sometimes it does obfuscate a little bit too much. But that's okay.
I agree on that point for sure.
It is what it is, and the guy, when you read up about the design of Reigns, he said that he wanted to make, because the Reigns has been ported to a lot of things, and it started out life as a phone game, and he knew that when he was making a phone game, he had to make the sentences and the choices pretty snappy, because there's only so much real estate in the phone screen.
Right.
And so he was aware, and he even says this, he comes out and says this, he says the politics of today is a bit messed up, and he's aware that he's making a game that feeds into that, but he thinks it's important for people to talk about the fact that we are distilling things to binary choices a lot of the time. We don't talk about nuance when we talk about, like, for example, the debate on climate change very often boils down to, yes, we should do something about climate change, or no, we shouldn't, and there's no in between.
Yeah.
I agree strongly that yes, we should do something about climate change, but to appease all the people who don't think that climate change is a problem, you could get there through steps, and that's the kind of thing that Reigns would just throw away. It'd be like, do you want to build biodomes?
It's just a choice. Just pick now.
Yeah.
No, biodomes are stupid.
Nope. It was a bad movie. It's going to be a bad idea, too.
Yes. That's true. So, I want to say that I'm glad that we played Reigns for what it is. I think, unfortunately, Reigns also suffers from its simplicity. So
the thing about that is, though, if you want something it's not necessarily mindless.
No,
but if
it's not mindless.
Something to play, like if you're on the bus going somewhere and it's taking you
and this is on mobile. It's $3 on Google Play. I just looked that up here because I was wondering if it was, because I might buy that myself, because there's not too many good mobile games out there, and I like this more because it's it's simple control method, as all phone games are.
Yeah.
Sorry, games that like to try to think you can be real on a phone, but you can't. So this one does everything it can with their limited control system, but has somewhat complex systems, although because it hides a lot of those systems, and because they can be a little random at times, it kind of shows its colors as probably was made in mind as a mobile game.
It was. It's
nothing wrong with
a mobile game. There's nothing wrong with that. And again, like you said, it does everything so well that it's perfectly suited for mobile.
And it totally makes sense as a mobile game, because it's one of those games I'm going to play 5 minutes max, right? I'm not going to sit there and play this for Stellaris hours.
Right. The other thing is that if you buy it on mobile, if you buy it on any platform, it's one purchase. There's no in-app purchases. It's just you get the game, and then if you bump up to the collector's edition, you get that as well, and then off you go. All the collector's edition adds, by the way, is new cards.
Yeah, it's like 100 cards or something like that.
Yeah, right. And
it's only like $1 more, so why not?
Right.
I mean,
and for what you're getting, like you said, it's a short game. It's a game you'll play in short bursts. For what you're getting a kingdom simulator that will, if you allow it to, cause you to think and say, we do actually do this. We do make everything binary, and this is a problem with our culture as it stands right now.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I don't. The one thing that I felt was a bit iffy was the sound design and the music. It's okay. It does what it needs to do, but there's nothing. Like, unfortunately, Reigns is the kind of game where you're not necessarily paying too much attention to the music. And then when it does show up, it shows up in a very big way, in a very scary way. Like, for example, if you go down into the dungeon, which you can do, suddenly the music is all encompassing, and it gets in the way almost.
Yeah, it's there for ambience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's largely forgettable actually, because I couldn't tell you what it's like now.
Yeah, and the sound design is sort of the same thing. People talking goofy voices, and it's the sound design.
It's the art style that sticks with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I feel like that's a missed opportunity again, because with this game, you want everything to work together in concert to create a feeling and an ambience, and a thing that an idea that when you step away, suddenly you're seeing the forest for the trees, and you go, oh wait, actually, there's a lot going on in the third day. But while you're playing it, you're not necessarily thinking about that. And unfortunately, I think that the sound design does this service, because it's very, very basic. That's about it. Is there anything? Because I figure we talked about as much Reigns we can talk about.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot you can really say about it other than what we've said.
Right. I think we reined it in.
We did indeed.
I see what you did there.
I don't.
So let's talk recommendations. Is there anyone who wouldn't recommend us? Let's start there.
No, I don't think so.
No.
Not for me. I
think I would more so recommend it as a phone game than on the computer. Cause
I think
it's
that's
fine on the computer too, and if you don't have a smartphone, obviously, you can get it on the PC.
Right.
If you're interested in it, it's fun.
Yeah, a phone or tablet game, something to take up time if you're on public transportation,
game, or if you have a laptop or tablet. Sure, totally.
It's engaging enough to keep your mind going, but it's simple enough and easy enough to put down that you never feel like totally sucked into it. So.
Yep.
Yeah.
You can just walk away from it at any point and go, all right, cool, we'll come back later.
Right. I feel sort of the same way, and one of the things that's great about Reigns is that the way it's set up is that it's very readable and very easy to see. So if you're sitting on a computer, you're not going to see more; you're just going to see bigger. And so as a phone game, this works surprisingly well. I played it on computer because I'm just not into phone games, and I appreciated the extra little because on a phone. The way Reigns is set up is it's set up with the cards in the middle, and there's a little bit of space around the cards. So on computer you see a backdrop, and you're not going to see. Yeah,
you can see what the mobile screen would look like. It's just the whole.
Right.
Yeah, the card and the surround of the card, and then that background wouldn't be there.
Right. So I appreciated that because again that ties back into art style, and art style's quite good for what it is. I would recommend this, and I'm going to strongly recommend this for anyone, really. About the only thing that I would say is that this is not a game that lends itself to being particularly kid-friendly. It looks like it should be. But then the kid needs to understand what they're doing, and I think that when we're talking about kids, this is the kind of thing that you can give to like a 12-plus-year-old, and then have conversations with them afterwards about what did you choose, why did you choose that, what's going on in your head. But beyond that point, like 12 and down, it's too complicated. They'll struggle with it.
Yeah, it might work for a toddler just to have something colorful and motion.
Yeah.
But as far as a game that's really going to entertain them, they're not going to understand it.
Yeah.
First off, you need to be able to read, otherwise you're not going to get it at all.
No.
And if you're young enough not to be able to read, then all it is going to be colors.
It's not
going to
but help you very much if you can't read.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a fair.
But the point that I was making is that if you look at Reigns from an outsider, and you're not really looking at the blurb or anything, it looks like it could be kid friendly because everything looks so happy and jolly and colorful, and then you play it and you're like, oh my god, Rex.
Yeah.
So again, I mean, I would strongly recommend it to anyone because it's got so much to do with our political climate that it's an important game for that reason alone. I think almost that the younger you give this to someone, like 12 or 13 or whatever, the more you can help shape them, because this is the kind of thing where you can step back from the game and sit down with your child and say, what did you choose? Do you understand that the world is a little bigger than you think it is? Let's talk about these issues. And it's a great game for launching into some of those issues.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I would especially strongly recommend it to parents with kids. But I would recommend it for anyone. Anyone should play this game because of the way it deals with choice.
Sure. I mean, and the price is right.
The price is absolutely right.
It's not free, but it's not a $20 app either. It's a nice.
And as I said, when you get the game, you get everything. There's no further in-app purchases.
Yeah, no transactions.
No microtransactions.
No, just
you don't have to worry about.
We want to see how far we can take literally just binary choice in a game, and I think it does pretty well at that.
It does. So yeah, that was Reigns. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to roll for the next game now, but we are not sure whether or not we're going to be playing that until next week. But we'll talk about that and put up an article on the site.
Yeah.
So yeah, let me pull up the list for that. So we have Galaxy, Corpse Party, and Replica. And so let me share my screen with you guys on Skype so you can see the stuff. Sure, I'll share that screen. Start. Alright, can you see it?
I can see it.
There it is, yes. I can see it now.
I'm going to make sure that... Alright, cool. We're going to just click it so that when it drops in, it'll roll. So 1 to 2 will be Galaxy, 3 to 4 Corpse Party, 5 to 6 we're playing Replica, and we got a 6. Replica it is.
Playing Replica.
So
okay,
I will write that up.
Thank you.
Replica is a pretty interesting game. Definitely different from anything else we've played so far on this, I think. I would classify it as a puzzle game, quote unquote.
Okay.
The conceit is that you are playing a teenager who's been arrested and put into a room, and so the government gives you a cell phone, and they don't tell you whose cell phone it is. They don't tell you what it means. They just tell you need to figure out how to unlock this phone and find out who this belongs to and whether or not they are associated with terrorist cells.
Right.
And so that's the puzzle, is you trying to figure out how to get inside this phone and learn more about who owned the phone, what they do now, and whether or not you can do anything about it.
Right.
So, yeah, that's what we'll be playing next week.
Very good.
Yeah.
Next week is also Father's Day, so are we going to have podcasts on Father's Day?
That's the thing. The other issue is that E3 is still running, and so we may, but we're not sure, have a podcast about E3, which just is about, all the conferences, because we're not going to do conference by conference.
Right.
So we are not sure. Replica? So what I think that we'll do is we'll talk about that after the podcast is over here. And then we'll just make an announcement on the...
with the information page that goes up.
Right. And then we'll just talk about it there.
Sounds good to me.
All right.
Cool.
Thank you, Internet, for joining us for this particular podcast. It was shorter than normal, but then Range is not a very long game. There's not a lot to see and do. But it is an interesting game, and I think that you should play it. So if you haven't picked it up, do it. It's super cheap. And you will hopefully come away with some thoughts about our current society. Thank you so much for joining me, Yoda. Say goodbye, please.
Bye, everybody.
And say goodbye, Mr. Scooters.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye, folks. We'll see you soon.